Okay. So like what in particular are we talking about here? Like,
I think breeding is really what we're talking about. I think fundamentally, when you say trans women are women,
uh-huh.
at the end of the day, there's always going to be the necessary component that is childbirth and, like, reproduction, which is
No,
one of the. Oh, okay, hang on. Let's just, before we jump in, sort of thing. And
sure.
so I think that that is fundamentally one of probably the main reason ultimately that anyone ever forms long term relationships, at least in the overwhelming majority of cases. I think the expectation to breed is there.
Sure, but so like have you had this conversation with other people before?
Well,
There's
lots
no
of
way
people,
you're
lots of
not
times, right?
okay because you can't defend this argument. It's horrible.
Go
So
on.
what would you say to a woman that has her tubes tied that's not capable of having children? It's just no longer a woman. Or what about a man that's had a vasectomy? Is he no
No, I
longer a
didn't
man?
say I didn't say they were no longer a woman, but they no longer fulfill the sort of necessary biological imperative that the gender role of woman is designed to operate around.
Okay. Oh my God, there's so many loaded terms in here. So first of all, designed implies an argument from nature, which is we're not even going to go to there. But when you say
Well, no, 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 no. Okay, stop, because that's exactly the first place we need to go. Because I do think that the gender role, the social gender role of woman, has a natural origin, and I think that it's designed to fulfill a natural function.
Okay, so are you going to take on like a so are you going to take on a morally prescriptive position based on nature? Are you going to tell me that because certain things are designed in some biological way, we have some sort of like an ought statement that we ought to pursue something because it's like in some ways found in nature? That's like a really weird
Well,
position to
it
take.
really depends what it is you're talking about. But, like, I don't think that gender roles are transcendental. So
Okay, I mean, if you want to go down the naturalistic arguments, I mean, we can do that. It just we're in a really weird area because we're gonna have to start deciding like, well, what falls under that and what doesn't, which implies we don't actually care
yeah,
about nature at all. We're appealing to some higher power.
no,
Yeah, well, because
I don't agree. I think the thing that we're appealing to is the natural biological state of humanity.
the natural biological state of humanity is not two men having a conversation on Discord, though. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, our natural
Yeah, but
state is like
we're not
hunter
trying to
gatherer.
reproduce.
Not everybody is constantly trying to reproduce in their lives.
I didn't say they were.
Then why are we talking about reproduction when we're talking about trans
Because
women?
for the majority of people, they will want to.
Even if I'm not even sure if that's true, but even if that is true,
That's of course true.
I well,
The population would tank in one generation if that wasn't true.
the population is already tanking across every single
No,
Western country
it's
almost.
shrinking by a small degree every year. Yes.
Yeah, but it's shrinking, contracting because not everybody wants to reproduce because women are
Yeah,
having
but
less
that's a
children to
tiny number of each generation that reproduces. That's a
it's
tiny
less
number,
than
which is
it's
why
less
it's a
than
tiny
2.0. I
percentage.
mean, like women, we're not having children at a replacement rate anymore. I don't know what tiny. All of these words are like really weird. Like, what do you mean by tiny number? We're not replacing our population right now. Like all of the
Yeah.
populations of the Western world are
Okay.
shrinking.
Calm down. Right. Yeah. the the replacement rate in, say, in my country is 1.9, but that means that a very small number of women are not reproducing in comparison to the number of women who are reproducing. It's millions and millions and millions of women who reproduce,
Okay,
and
sure.
it's a downward trend
Okay, so let's say that the majority of people want to reproduce. How is it even relevant to this conversation?
because we're talking about a social role. And the purpose of the social role of woman is to facilitate the ability to form a breeding pair with a man, because they're the two aspects of humanity that both need to be fertile in order to conceive and produce a child. This is what I mean when I say you can't separate the gender role from woman, the gender role of woman, from the biological essence of what it is to be a female. One was created by the other, but the formulation "trans women are women" suggests that the gender role of woman has created the biological reality of being female, which is not correct in my opinion.
Okay, so let's just walk down the road. So do you think
Hmm.
that let's say that women en masse said that they wanted to pursue like higher education and work opportunities more than they wanted to pursue having children. Do you think that they should have the right to do that, or should we culturally or via the state or whatever force them, compel them to have more children instead? Because that would be like
I don't think that's got anything to do with the transgender debate.
Okay, well, you're speaking in terms of like biological prescriptivism right now. You're telling me that like the role of woman should be to have a child or for like childbirth.
I didn't say it should be anything. Society at large will decide in a very sort of holistic way what the role of woman should be. But I think that there's no getting around the fact that it was something created by society to account for the observable biological differences between men and women, and the biological reality that women have an imperative to breed and the mechanism by which
Wait,
to do
wait. What do
so.
you mean by what do you
And
mean
so
by
a social
imperative?
mechanism needs to be created to justify that and to facilitate that.
Sure. Okay. So I'm not trying to misquote. I'm just trying to understand because a lot of the words you're using
Hmm.
are really loaded. When you say women have an imperative to breed, what do you mean by that?
Human beings have a biological imperative to reproduce.
What do you mean by imperative? Like, are you saying that this is like just descriptively something we do, or are you saying that it's something that we should push
It's
towards?
something that they feel that they want to do,
Okay, so what does that have to do? If some people feel like they need to reproduce, which is fine, I'm okay with that. What does that have to do with the discussion about trans people?
because we need a way of being able to actually do that.
But we still can do that. You can go and have a child with a woman that is capable of having a child.
Yeah, but you need to know what a woman is.
No, you don't. You need to know if they're you do. You're
Of course you
laughing,
do.
but you realize that there are women that you would call real women that can't have children, right? Do you acknowledge
Yes, I
that?
know.
Okay, so
Yes, of
knowing
course.
whether or not somebody is a woman under whatever arbitrary Sargon definition of woman there is, knowing that somebody
It's
is
not my definition.
well, it is your definition. Trust me.
Well,
Um,
adult human female. It's just the dictionary definition. It's
no, no,
the common
no.
definition society at large uses.
Sure. So
I haven't
common.
innovated the definition of woman.
So common definition versus actual scientific definition versus kind of like the categorical definition. These are all like things that can be heavily contested. But in what you would
Sure.
call a woman, there are things that fit under that category that are not
Yeah,
capable of having children. So why would it be so
yeah.
bad to include trans women under that?
I didn't say it would be bad.
Wait, so then what's the problem? Then what do we disagree with?
Well, the problem is the essential attack on the social construct that is a woman, because the thing is, saying trans women are women is a statement that will necessarily lead to circumstances where a part of the gender role that is woman will not be fulfilled. And so the person who was engaging with the trans woman, expecting that aspect of the gender role to be fulfilled, will find themselves necessarily not only disappointed, but I guess deceived in a way.
Wait,
And
this is simply solved with a single question. When you're having a
go on.
conversation with somebody and you bring up children, you say, I would like to have children, and the other person says, I can't have children. How does that conversation damage the role of women or the social category of woman in the West?
Because of the way it's approached and the things that will happen. I mean you could easily describe it as transphobic to say to ask a person who you think is trans if they can have children.
Nobody in any part of the serious world would say that, aside from four follower
Well, there are
people.
lots of places in the unserious world where
So
they'll say that.
yeah, because on four follower accounts on Twitter, you can find any stupid opinion. But like
Oh, you can find this
actual
in people
people,
who are quite.
I would love to see any source
This is
ever.
the opinion of the police in Great Britain, you know.
The opinion of the police in Great Britain is that if you ask somebody while you're on a date, would you like to have children or can you have children? That's transphobic. That's the position of the police in Great Britain.
They certainly could interpret it that way.
Has it ever been interpreted that way?
Possibly, I'd have to have a look.
Okay, so then I don't care about this. So generally,
Okay.
for any serious person I've ever heard had this conversation before, I have never heard any trans rights activist ever say, if you ask a trans person if they can have children, you are being transphobic. Now, that's not to say that there might be ways you could phrase it. So, for instance, in the way that you approach it, I would definitely say it's transphobic because you seem to imply that a woman that can't have children is not a woman, which is not only damaging to trans women, but even to normal women, or what you would consider normal women. So, like,
hang on, stop there, because I think you're kind of hitting on something. I think that there are women who definitely feel like less of a woman because they can't have children, and I think that a sterile man would probably feel like less of a man as well.
yeah, but we don't want people to feel that way. Don't you think that? Don't
I
you
don't
think?
know. I'm just trying to. You can, yeah, I agree
Wait,
that it's not nice
on that particular
right, that
thing,
they feel
do
that
you
way.
do you think it would be good, or do you want society to feel like if a man can't have a child, he should view himself as less of a man?
It's not that I want this. It's that the problem that you will always run up to is the fact that definitions necessarily leave something outside of what they're defining, and those things that are left outside of it may not be happy with being left outside. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you should change the definition for their feelings.
We
Because the
absolutely
definition,
should.
no, I don't agree. I think that the thing, it depends what it is.
Well,
I mean, it really
like
depends
every
what it is, doesn't
definition,
it?
every category that we've created is a socially constructed category that we create to serve human happiness. So why wouldn't we
Sure,
redefine it? The category of man and
because
woman are socially defined categories. We could change it if we want to make more people happy. Why wouldn't we?
well, by that reasoning, why define anything?
Because I just said because we get some utility out of it.
I don't think you get utility out of words that don't have solid definitions. I think the word becomes useless.
I never said we couldn't have solid definitions.
You just did. If we
No,
can't
I said
say,
we could change the definition.
yeah, but if we're changing the definition to mean something that is not within what we consider the definition useful to be defining, then you're not really. I mean, if if the term woman can be used to define someone that is biologically male, then it's no longer an adult human female.
First of all, the term woman, under your definition, probably already does define some people that are biologically male, and you don't even realize it. Firstly. Secondly, when we use...
How would that be the case?
Because I guarantee you that I could show you pictures of XY chromosome women that have, there's a name for the condition, but it basically, you have extreme androgen insensitivity, and you can grow up your whole life and completely look like a woman, 100%, and you would look at her, and you would say, well, let me see her vagina. Oh, she has one. That's a real woman. And then you would look at the genes, and you would say, oh, shit, they have XY chromosomes, and you would have no idea what to say, right? So this idea that there's some hardcore...
Okay, so that's an abnormality, right?
It's absolutely something that exists, though. What I'm saying is
but that's a genetic abnormality, isn't it?
What does that have to do with my argument?
Well, what your argument is, what I would argue is that if we're going to define things, then we're not going to be defining them to satisfy the abnormal fringe cases. We're going to be defining them to satisfy the vast majority of cases in which they'll be useful.
Okay,
that's
when you
it's going to be most useful.
Sure.
Right?
So would you agree that we make definitions in society for them to be useful?
Yes, I think
when you say we make a definition to be useful, what do you mean by useful? What do you mean by that?
To be used and facilitate whatever interactions that need to be facilitated.
Cool.
By presumably the largest number of people.
Awesome. I agree with that. So we create definitions in society and we organize categories because they're useful to people insofar as that they serve some need to make most of us happy. If we can expand the category of woman to include trans woman, I don't see what the problem is for that.
Because it's not accurate. I mean, like these definitions. This is what I'm trying to say.
Wait, can we do this word by word? Let's do this word by word. When you say not accurate,
listen. The concept of woman is not a transcendental concept. It is biologically essential.
No, it's not. Wait, what?
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Show me where.
Well, I disagree.
Well, no, you can't disagree. You're just wrong. There's nowhere in.
No, I can disagree, and I don't think that you're correct.
It doesn't matter what you think here.
Well, if a woman in standard usage of English or just any language, which going back into the midst of time has been adult human female, then that is a biologically essentialist word. That's the purpose of it. It's designed to reflect a physical biological reality.
There you go. It is. So we have categories that we've created because we believe that they reflect some underlying physical reality. The concept of female, that isn't a real thing. That's not something that exists in nature. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I don't agree with you.
Okay. If we eliminate all human beings, where do you find the concept of female?
In the animal world, I suppose.
No, you don't. You can find some things because what you have is you have some things that have collections of certain features, and if we want, we can label them in certain ways, right? And that's what we do as people. We label things because we get some value out of it. We have people that generally have vaginas, can give birth to people. We've got people that generally have dicks that fuck people, right? We call some of these females. Yeah, we call some of these females. We call some of these males. But there is nothing in science that says we must have this category of female, we must have this category of male, or that we must define them in any particular way.
That we need to think about there. Science can only tell us data. We need to be able to interpret that, and for that we need philosophy.
Exactly. So philosophically, when we're creating these categories, we have to understand that the reason at the end of the day we create these categories like male and female isn't because science tells us to, because science can never make these kinds of claims. It's because we as a society have decided we want this definition because it makes all of us happier. That's generally how everything works in reality.
No, we have it to reflect a biological reality about human beings.
Why do we care about reflecting a biological reality about human beings?
Because we have to live with one another.
Because it makes us happier when we can organize these differences. We get use out of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It
Yeah.
makes us happier when we organize these differences.
Okay. Because
Yes,
we
that's
get
exactly
utility
right.
out of them, right? But we could
There,
organize.
there is certainly a utilitarian argument to be made, yeah.
Sure, but
But
we can.
I think that it's probably deeper than that, and I think there are probably other reasons that these things are tied. That are, again, I can't stress enough. I do believe that this is very biologically essentialist, and I think that trying to separate that is ridiculous. Because I mean, as soon as you separate, if you say that gender is transcendental, okay, why did we create it in the first place?
Because we have some utility out of it. It's essential to recognize that every category that we construct as humans, we do so.
But
because
that's a biological essentialist argument.
no, it's
If
not.
it's
My
essential,
argument is not
what's it
biological.
categorizing?
What?
What's it categorizing?
What is it categorizing? We taking a description of some things that we hope are representative of some underlying traits, and we're assigning them, we're ascribing them to certain categories.
Biological traits, right?
Yes.
So,
Biological essentialism, your naturalist argument, implies that because something exists in a certain way in nature, we ought to recognize that difference. But this is not how we construct categories in real life. For instance, there's a million.
No,
different...
I don't agree. I think that is in fact how we construct categories in real life.
Then why don't we categorize people by the number of moles on their body? We could do that. I would
imagine that utility is something that we would apply here.
Okay, so what you just did is, instead of, you avoided the science and you said, well, hold on, I'm going to appeal to utility. That's my argument. What I'm telling you is that every time we construct a category, we're appealing to the utility of the category, not some scientific or biological realism or constructivism. Or
yeah, I agree, but the category itself is a biological category.
No, there's no such thing as a biological category. Categories don't exist biologically. No, there's not. I can't.
We choose to. Look, no,
yeah, we choose. No. Wait, listen. What you just said.
Fundamentally misunderstanding what I'm saying.
What you just said betrayed your argument.
No, I promise you, you absolutely are. Right?
You just said that we choose to. The fact that we make that choice, that choice is a normative choice. We're doing something out of a moral compulsion. It's a normative choice.
No, it's not even moral. I mean, it probably is both also moral.
No, it
is. There is also a practical necessity.
No, the necessity.
Of course there is.
Just because we make a choice to organize things in a certain way doesn't mean that choice is necessarily backed by reality, and that reality tells us we have to make that choice. So, for instance, I could have 100 people, and I could separate them based on height. I could separate them based on gender. I could separate them based on eye color. A million different traits. But nothing in science is going to tell me what I should separate them on. I have to make that normative choice.
I don't care about the science of it, really. It doesn't really matter about the science of it, because it comes down to the interpretation of it. And at the end of the day, there is no questioning the biological reality that male and female as distinct sexes do exist. Even if humans weren't around to categorize them, the animals themselves would categorize themselves in that way. They don't even need a language to do this. This is such a primal thing. It's done by pheromones, man. Right?
We could also categorize people based on the number of bruises they have, based on the color of their hair.
But that'd be stupid, and only an idiot would suggest it.
Your language is so loaded. How can you not understand this? You just said it would be stupid. You're begging the question.
Reflective of reality. But if you want to argue that trying to reflect reality is loaded, okay. I don't care. What I'm saying is disprove what I'm saying, and you can't because I'm describing reality. You're not.
You are literally disproving your own statements with every sentence you speak, and you don't realize it. When you're saying, you keep saying that your reality is, I'm choosing the reality. The choices that you make are arbitrary and unjustified. That you're not.
These aren't choices that I made, and they're not arbitrary, and they are just.
You're missing a deeper level. Okay, what you're saying is that male and female refer to some underlying physical property. I don't disagree with that, of course.
Yes.
However, I could design a million categories that could refer to any number of underlying properties. Now, whether or not we choose to use male and female, or whether or not we choose to use redhead or brunette, that's an arbitrary choice. We don't find the answer on what we should categorize.
That's not true. I don't agree that that's arbitrary. I think that there are physical imperatives that make us choose these things because of frankly, they're the path of least resistance.
Okay, can you tell me then, why ought we value the category of male and female?
Because there is a distinct connection with the social category of man and woman to male and female. Okay, these are things that we use in our social lives.
Okay, so you're describing things to me. You're giving me descriptive things. What I'm asking you is, why ought we value male and female? Don't tell me that we do. I'm asking you, why should we? Why ought we value the category of male and female?
We are social animals, and we need to interact with one another, and we have inherited a very effective way of doing this, especially considering it's such a complicated issue. And this is something that it's been gifted to us from the millions of previous generations who had to struggle with the same things. And they came up with a fairly workable system that works for something like, what was it, 99.3% of people or something. So that's pretty good, really.
Okay, why ought we value that though? Like,
because it's working.
okay, so let's say that we take this, okay? Let's say that we say that
Mm.
our moral values ought to come from things that have worked, and I won't make you define worked in the past because we could go a million different ways with that,
Well,
right? What
yeah,
if I make the same argument in favor of, say, slavery, or in favor of, say, lack of women's rights, or in favor of, say, hunter-gatherer lifestyles? Like,
because there are, I mean, you could make that in favor of hunter-gatherer lifestyles. In favor of slavery, you're obviously violating someone's human rights. But I mean, do you consider gender roles to be a violation of a person's human rights?
on a consequentialist level, yeah, if you're constantly denying somebody the ability to exist happily in society, yeah, I would consider that to be a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, but is that a violation of the human rights?
What do you mean by I don't believe in human rights? What do
Like
you mean
your
by
girlfriend
human
cheating
rights?
on you isn't a
Sure.
violation of your human rights, but it's a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean by human
I don't
rights.
know.
Like,
I don't know if people have the right to determine their own gender. I don't know if they do. They might have the freedom to try,
wait. So who
but I
has
don't know
that
if you can
right?
call that a right. Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of gender happens in other people's heads. So it's this is the thing. Like, it's such an unbelievably complex thing, and you're
It's
just
not
trying
though. It's
to.
very simple. It's actually
No,
incredibly
that's
simple.
bollocks.
It's not.
That's
It's
obvious
so
bollocks,
simple.
man.
It's very simple.
No, no, you're just being a contrarian. I mean, like, no one with
How
any
wait?
sort of credible understanding of this would say this was simple.
Every single
Like, you
person.
have to be a lunatic.
When I say simple, what I mean is if you understand the arguments, it's very easy to start at a very foundational level and get all the way to where we are now, right? If we
Yeah, but
reckon,
I don't think that you do just understand the arguments. I think there are lots of arguments, and I think that it's important to be aware of the foundation with which you're starting, because you're starting from transcendental foundation. You're saying that gender has no connection to the biological entity that is a human being.
okay, here, you know what? I'll try it. You can stop me when I'm wrong, okay? So
Hmm.
let's look at universal categories. So a universal category is a human constructed thing that is the form of something, right? Let's say that we say like a chair, right? That's a universal category. Now, what is a chair? I mean, we can argue a million times. Is it made out of wood, blah, blah, blah. But there's like a universal form of a chair, right? Now, all categories are arbitrary constructs that don't.
No,
Oh, go ahead.
hang
Okay.
on.
Yep.
Hang on, yeah, you said okay. So you're saying that there's a universal form of chair. Are you arguing like the Plato's world of forms
Sure.
perspective?
Yeah. Let's borrow some Plato. Sure.
I don't think that's a wise idea.
Okay, well then maybe
I
you'll
don't
hammer me
think
down
that
on this
there
one
is.
then, okay? Do you think that the form
Well,
of a
yeah.
chair exists somewhere? Do you think that that's stored somewhere in the world, the universal form of a chair?
Well, a chair is a platonic form. I would suggest that what we have defined to be a chair doesn't have a universal ideal. No.
Okay, cool. So then I would take that same argument and I would apply that to every category that we've constructed. What is a
Yeah.
computer? That definition is expanded. What is a cell phone?
Well,
What is...
I agree. I don't even think the category of woman has a universal ideal.
Okay, cool. So when we would build ourselves all the way up to saying, okay, well, what are some socially constructed categories we have? Right now, we can both agree that the categories of white and black are very constructed, and those have changed over time as well. Well, also the category of male and female
Well,
or woman and man is
I
also
think
changed as
there's
well.
I think there's a definite biological component to the categories of black and white.
But only because we say there has to be. That's the only reason why. That doesn't come from science. It's
Yeah,
because-
but we only say they have to be because we want the terminology to have a use in our everyday lives.
yes,
Because what you're suggesting, yeah, I know, yeah, exactly. Yes, that's you agreeing with me.
yes.
Because what you're suggesting is that if we don't do that, like the alternative to what you're suggesting is that we don't really have intelligible language.
No.
Yes.
Woman and male can be the same they are now, but we expand them to include trans people because it makes those people's lives better and it doesn't do any damage to the currently
but
existing categories.
that's-
Why would you not
It
do
does.
that?
It does.
How?
It does do damage to the currently existing categories.
How?
Because it makes them misrepresentative of the thing that they are. Like an adult human female is someone we can biologically identify, and you want to include that to expand that to include the category of adult human male, and that's ridiculous.
Okay,
then the
like, can you
definition
give me...
disappears.
No, it doesn't disappear. I don't know why
Yes,
you
it
think
does.
that just because you expand a definition, all of a sudden it becomes worthless. But let's say
Because
that's true.
man and woman are dichotomized.
First of all, they're not a
They're
dichotomy.
either a man or
No,
a
no,
woman.
no. First of all, it's
And
not.
if you expand
no.
it to include
This
both,
is-
then they
This is an anti-science argument. So if you want to say that, that's fine. But the distribution between male and female is
We're not talking
bimodal.
about science.
It's not binary. It is bimodal. There's a ton of overlap between what is male and what is female.
I
Okay?
appreciate that, but we're not talking about science. We're talking about sociology. And that
Okay,
means we're talking about interpretation.
sure. So if we talk about it from a sociological point of view, what damage or harm can come from me including trans people under the definition of male or female?
Well, on its surface, not much. It appears, right? On the surface, it seems that not much, but then you've got into the sort of like what is a father and a mother, because then you've severed the connection, the sort of biological connection of father and mother, and then you're starting to get into, and again, that's
Wait,
not
wait,
accurate.
let's do this
We
very
use
let's do this
these.
let's do this very slowly, step by step. So you're telling me
Sure,
that if
sure.
I say trans men are men and trans women are women, that I've destroyed what it means to be a father and a mother? What do you mean by that?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you can make the female the father and the male the mother.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me how this is damaged? Like, are you saying that like a trans man couldn't be like a real father, or a trans woman couldn't be like a real mother to like a child, or
Well, a trans. Sorry, it's remembering the way around. A woman who becomes a man is never going to provide the Y gametes, I think it is, or whatever it is, to a child, right?
okay?
So that goes explicitly against what the definition of those terms are.
Am I supposed
so
to
you're
ignore
making the
like the
terms themselves
extreme amount of
useless.
irony that this is coming? I'm not trying to make this ad hominem, but aren't you literally a stepfather? Like, are you not an actual father to your
Yeah, but
children,
that's
or?
I'm not the biological father of my stepchild.
But
No,
when
obviously not.
your son or
Which is why we
children,
have the term step.
but that's not okay.
Like,
And I could be totally
is
wrong,
that,
and you could lie to me maybe to win an
I'm the
argument.
biological.
But when your child, if you've got a stepchild, does he come up to you and he say, "Hey, stepfather Sargon" or "Stepfather Carl"? Do they actually call you that? Your kids call you that? Hey, stepdad.
Well, my biological son calls me dad,
Okay.
and my non-biological stepdaughter calls me Carl.
How old?
9.
Okay. What? So
Why is this hard? But this then
well,
plays right back into the.
why is this hard to
No,
believe?
no, but
Because
this is why trans women will never actually be women. They'll always be trans women.
well, we first of all, we're very far from establishing that. But you think that it's you
You
think that
just.
no, we have not established. I
Oh,
promise you,
okay.
we have not
Okay.
established
Sorry.
that.
Yeah.
So
Carry on.
So you're saying that step parents could never be real parents in terms of like how we define like father mother could never be real parents to
It
children.
depends how you define parent, but they can't be the real father or mother, can they?
Okay, I love that you just said that. It depends on how we define parent. I totally agree with you 100%. It depends on how we
Yeah, but I
define
didn't
like
say parent. I said father and mother.
that's could be synonyms for parents. Who are your parents? Your father and your
No, they're
mother.
not. No, they're not. They're different. They're different words. They're often used as synonyms, but they're not the same thing.
Do you not see how incredibly subjective all of these words are? How we can twist and bend and this is what happens. Descriptively, this
Yeah.
is how we use language. And do you see how there's
Yeah.
not much damage? Like if you were in a classroom and some kid was like, I'm going to go to the fair tomorrow with my father and mother, and some other kid was like, that's not your father and mother, that's your stepmother. You should have said parents, right? Nobody like uses language this way. It's not how we recognize these categories socially.
Yeah,
right?
but nobody uses language in the way that the SJWs want either. So I mean, like, saying that, who cares?
Okay, hold on.
Like,
Okay, so I'm going to assume you conceded that whole topic because you just pivoted hardcore. What do you mean by SJWs use language in ways that we don't?
Well, this is what we're talking about fundamentally: is where does language come from, and what decides the profligation of it?
Sure. So language comes from humans. We construct it because it provides us utility.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. It is not usually imposed on us by the state.
I don't know if SJWs necessarily want it imposed on you by the state. What do you mean?
I think they do.
Okay, let's ignore like.
I don't think we'd have laws about hate speech and like the trans laws and all this sort of stuff if they didn't. I mean, what do you not remember in New York? You can get fined for misgendering someone.
That's if you do it in a discriminatory way. If you're an
I
employee.
don't care, but what you're saying is you don't think they want to use the state, and now you're making justifications for them using the state.
Sure. This is okay.
Yeah,
so we're kind of going to a different argument here in terms of like the overall use of language. So if you want to talk specifically in regards to like laws surrounding like hate speech or in regards to like discrimination laws, which by the way have nothing to do with SJWs. These have existed for decades in the United States. Unless maybe you think like
hang on. Look, I don't want to get off. But the discrimination laws, like these things, can be used by any faction if they wanted to be. Okay, so there's no anyway. Like, look,
I'm just curious. Do you consider somebody like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, are these SJWs to you, or
not to me personally? But that's because I agree with their philosophy.
Okay, so you've literally defined SJW as somebody you disagree with. Like, is that really the
Not
definition?
necessarily, but
That's what you
kind of
just
in a
said.
way. Yeah, kind of. I think everyone has like